I'm Lindsay Hancock, founder of My Better Batch, based here in North Carolina.
So my name is Szucs with Advanced Superabrasives, and we are located in Western North Carolina.
I actually joined a colleague that I worked with there to start a company called Creative Snacks in 2009. So we made trail mixes, nuts, granola, confections, and sold into grocery stores, club stores, all retail channels. We built that business from about 0 to 60 million over the next 10 years. The first time was when I left the fresh market and chose to join a startup as employee number one. And the way I describe that is I was the only one dumb enough to join our founder before we had products and customers and space.
I was going to go into big corp,
Okay.
and decided that it wasn't for me. I like the small business feel. I like that you can wear multiple hats. And the biggest thing I like that really brings me pleasure in what I do is I get to help the customer. You know, I get to see the customer, I get to help the customer, and with our particular product in grinding wheels, and what that is just think of an industrial tool. Industrial tool has to be made somehow. Well, a lot of high-tech, high-precision tools are made with our grinding wheels. So we're in automotive, aerospace, energy, food industry. Okay, you don't get your sliced meats or anything without our grinding wheels. You know, you talk about medical industry, everything that you can imagine that's high precision has to be ground. So we make grinding wheels for semiconductor, I mean, you name it. But what we really like to do is go visit the customer and to not just produce a product and sell it, but to give them the solution. And I think, you know, that's what really matches my skill set with a small business better than a large corporation. A large corporation, you really can't help the individual person on the ground, so to speak. You know, you don't have that personal touch. I think Lindsay spoke about it as well. I'm not a big corp kind of guy, and in my upbringing, I always like to be able to see my customer, talk to my customer, you know, see the smile on their face, feel their pain if they're in pain, whatever it is.
So how does one come to the point where one says, I want to quit my corporate job and start my own company? And why cookies or why grinding wheels?
I think there's been 2 times in my career where, looking back on it, I can't believe I chose to take a risk that could have gone very well or could have gone really the opposite direction. I was very fortunate. This with starting My Better Batch over the last year, that was the second time that happened in my career.
Oh, so that's the
jury's still out on, you know, what will happen with this company because we are brand new to the market. The first time was when I left the fresh market and chose to join a startup as employee number one. And the way I describe that is I was the only one dumb enough to join our founder before we had products and customers and space.
That's that smart cookie.
Creative Snacks.
Snacks. Sorry.
Yep. And so, but that could have gone 2 different directions. I was very fortunate that it was a growing, thriving company, and we ultimately sold that company and everyone benefited from that. But looking back on it now, that was a huge risk that I took. I had a small baby at home at the time. I had this nice cushy job with lots of room for advancement. There was a lot of things that I could have taken advantage of had I stayed in that corporate job. I think I like risk. I think I like learning new things, and I, you know, kind of going back to what we both talked about a little bit. I know that I don't stay in my lane very well, and so being able to be part of something from the ground up was something that was very attractive to me, and I think what lured me in. I also had a business partner, someone I worked for there at that company, who I put a lot of trust in, and I knew that whatever he got himself into, it would be a success. And so there was a little bit of, you know, that was definitely taken into account. But so yeah, looking back now.
To that point, can I ask you, so when you say you have a hard time staying in the lane,
yeah.
So do you mean that in the corporate world, you did not have enough freedom and power, and you wanted to be sort of the big fish in a small pond?
So I don't think it had anything to do with power.
Right.
I think it had more to do with, you know, the ability to learn new things and to broaden horizons. I also, at that point in time, I was in my 20s, and to be honest, I probably didn't know a whole lot about what I wanted to do. We had 448 teams of 4 to 5 students working on it. You emailed me one day and basically said you broke our X-Culture program, and it's great for you because there's so many students that want to work on your project. It's not great for me, but
one way I interpreted that situation was that there is a lot of excitement about this product.
Sure.
So if so many students chose the company, it probably tells me that at the very least they believe it's something interesting.
Yeah.
So it's some form of validation. If you look at them as a focus group, I guess it tells you
Right.
something.
Yeah, I mean, I communication, I was, the way that we worked communication was there were several questions that got filtered through your
Yeah,
team
yeah.
and would come to me on a semi-regular basis. And I think they were just filtering. There was a lot of the same questions being
That's
asked.
right.
And
So
the goal
Almost
was,
every team would ask the same few
Yep.
questions about marketing and logistics, and obviously instead of bugging you each time, we just have an FAQ. So in fact, literally we created an FAQ file saying that, well, before you ask us, check maybe somebody already did ask and maybe the answer is there.
Yeah.
So, but then occasionally it would be a unique question that we cannot answer.
Yeah, and then I had inquiries through the website. I had emails that came through, but I offered office hours
Yes.
once a week. And there were some students that took advantage of that, and the folks that did have open questions, they would come on there. And I think the value in the office hours was that a lot of people just came to listen.
Yeah.
What are other teams asking? What are they working on? What should I be thinking about that I'm not? And so that was 30 minutes of my work week that felt like time well spent, because it really did consolidate the communication and made it very easy.
You
I didn't have as many
You are
people.
right.
as
So
many
it's
groups.
a very different also product
Sure.
because grinding wheels, it's so specialized.
Yeah.
Many people never thought about it. Many people don't think they can help with interesting ideas, and so it usually tends to be either students with technical background, or maybe students who somehow interacted with something similar, or maybe students who just simply love the challenge. So yes.
Yeah, so we started with just doing a webinar on what our products are, just educating the students. What do we make? What are the industries we're in? What is it that they have in their lives that our products actually touch? So that started that. And then we didn't do office hours. What I did is I offered the teams after hours that we could set up Zoom calls or Google Meets or something like that, because I'm so used to working in an international environment. I know most of these students, after 7 p.m. my time or before 7 a.m. our time would work better for them because of the different time zones. So I would try to see if I could match some of those time zones for the students and see if we could have, a webinar here or web call here or something like that. But a lot of the questions the students would put together in an email, send me a list. We'd answer those, and then we would say, do we need to have a follow-up? Because sometimes they would say, we want to see what the actual product is doing. And so we would have to go somewhere and take a video or something like that, upload it for the students, and they loved that. And it was great. And you could tell out of the teams, the students who contacted the most, when I read their reports, you could really tell the in-depth thought that they put into it. So I'm not going to say that it completely correlates to how many times they contacted us, but you could definitely tell a difference in students that had very vague little bit of questions, and then the students that really were the ones that were pounding you with real, not all the time, but just real in-depth questions for answers. They were looking for specific answers to questions, and if you could give them those, you could really see in the report what their thinking was and how more in depth they were than those that didn't meet with you. So I had one team that didn't meet with us at all, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I read their report and I go, okay, yeah, that's what I would expect from a team that didn't meet with us at all. And then there was another team that met with us the most, and I read their report, and they went above and beyond what I thought they were originally going to do. And I think it was because they just got so excited about the project.
Sure.
So they just kept coming back. So I like the way we set it up where we did the webinar, and then we did, we can do Zoom calls after hours, because then that allowed me to do my work, allowed them to do stuff on their time as well. And then everything else was just via email. And we didn't have all the FAQs and stuff with you because we didn't have a lot of similar questions.
Sure.
More of us, our questions were specific, because if you had a student in India, they had specific markets. If you had a student in, let's say Ghana, they had a totally different set of markets there for our particular products, where yours are more universal.
Sure.
You could tell out of the teams, the students who contacted the most, when I read their reports, you could really tell the in-depth thought that they put into it. So I'm not going to say that it completely correlates to how many times they contacted us, but you could definitely tell a difference in students that had very vague little bit of questions, and then the students that really were the ones that were pounding you with real, not all the time, but just real in-depth questions for answers. They were looking for specific answers to questions, and if you could give them those, you could really see in the report what their thinking was and how more in-depth they were than those that didn't meet with you. So I had one team that didn't meet with us at all, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I read their report and I go, okay, yeah, that's what I would expect from a team that didn't meet with us at all. And then there was another team that met with us the most, and I read their report, and they went above and beyond what I thought they were originally going to do. And I think it was because they just got so excited about the project.
Sure.
So they just kept coming back. So I like the way we set it up, where we did the webinar, and then we did, we can do Zoom calls after hours, because then that allowed me to do my work, allowed them to do stuff on their time as well. And then everything else was just via email. And we didn't have all the FAQs and stuff with you, because we didn't have a lot of similar questions.
Sure.
More of us, our questions were specific, because if you had a student in India, they had specific markets. If you had a student in, let's say Ghana, they had a totally different set of markets there for our particular products, where yours are more universal.
Sure.
Yeah, one challenge we have also is, and that's, some students show up but don't talk. One challenge that we cannot quite crack is, how do we organize the relationship among the teams? Do we encourage them to talk? Should they see each other as a competition or as collaboration? So we tried both ways, and we still cannot figure out. So the challenge is that they are afraid to share ideas, for example, because they think that another team will steal it. We say, well, go guys, talk to one another. And so that's where they're like, yeah, but if we start asking our questions or start, getting feedback on our ideas, they will take the idea, build upon it. So we didn't quite figure out how to, we tried like a discussion board for the teams. And so there would be, for example, a lot of times students would ask something they don't know, but nobody wants to provide the answer. And then when somebody does provide an answer, a lot of likes, you can tell that they're waiting, but they're just reluctant to share. So that's something we never quite figured out yet. I don't know. So again, it's a difficult question. So incentives. So we know, for example, that there are some platforms like, Incentive, where they would say, okay, this is the problem we're trying to solve, primarily natural sciences, like, how to fold this protein into, or, how to improve efficiency of this battery. And they say the winning team will get, for example, $10,000. The problem is that a lot of teams would sign up, but knowing that there are hundreds of teams trying to solve the problem and only one will basically winner takes it all, the incentive is not there to work. So once you realize you're not winning, so like you just basically drop out. And so for us, that's also a challenge. So what would be the incentive to keep working hard? So we try to not make it into a competition where winner takes all. But again, it's not quite clear for us. How do you, I guess it's more intrinsic motivation, trying to solve a problem, trying to impress the company. But I don't know, this is not so much of a question, rather than, might just simply, not even a complaint, but, something that I'm struggling with. So how do we incentivize the students to do as good a job as possible? Obviously, grade is one of them. Many companies end up offering internships. Some companies offer jobs. They say, actually, I love this, would you like to be our local representative? We've had cases, for example, when companies would bring business leads, like literally, I'm not sure if this happened with your company, but I can totally see how, somebody will go to local retailers, talk to them, and they say, hey, I found like 2 chains that want to sell your product. And then the company would say, oh, would you maybe want to be my regional representative in whatever country? I never thought about doing business there, but if you keep bringing me the contracts, maybe we can work out something. So I guess all of those are, incentives enough. And these are young people, just like Lindsay said, that you did it not for power or anything, you just wanted to explore. So many of them, it's just like the challenge. But I don't know, any suggestions for you how we can incentivize them so that they have the reason to do the best job possible? It's a difficult one. So it seems like they're trying as is, but can we offer them anything more? I don't know.
That's a tough one. In out there in the real business world, are you going to be incentivized for doing your job?
Yeah. Right.
It's
with real consultants, so
Sure.
to speak, you have a contract, you have
Sure.
you pay by the hour or for the project. Here they essentially work for free. So other than the satisfaction from solving the problem? Can we offer them anything else?
Yeah, I could tell a lot of the students connected with me on LinkedIn, and one of the really neat things when it came time for this project to be complete in graduations going on, there were a lot of students that took great pride in the fact that they had participated in this program and that they had participated in this specific project. I mean, they named the X Culture program, but you could tell that really meant a lot to them to have been part of the process. It wasn't that my team won out of, all of these reports, my team won. It was that I participated in this. Many of them said, I worked with my better batch and tagged my better batch, and I worked with Lindsay. And so there was a sense of pride. And so on my end, I didn't see, certainly with 450 groups, you've got some reports that are better than others,
yes,
and you've got some engagement that's better than others. But it would have been very hard for me to tell in that large of a group if there was more that could be done to be able to make sure that the students stayed engaged throughout the process.
Sure.
So not very helpful to you.
We have a lot shorter time to market than a lot of our bigger competitors. Our bigger competitors, what they're trying to do right now is actually consolidate our market. I'm sure you're seeing that in the food industry too. And then they want to commoditize everything so they can maximize profits, okay? And I understand that. And there's places in the world for that. But in the grinding wheel and with all the tooling and things that are coming out, carbon fiber airplanes, EVs, solar panels, new computers, new technologies, you can't commoditize products that are precision in order to make those products because they're so innovative. So much like Lindsay, I didn't want to work for a big corporation because I constantly wanted to learn new things, new technologies. I mean, in our industry, we're looking at how do you 3D print a grinding wheel? I mean, most people would say, well, you can't. Well, we're looking at it. You know what I'm saying? How do you do that? How do you use AI to work on different projects? That could be, what chemicals bind together better to hold a diamond crystal better. All these different things in our world that make things better. So how do we use innovations and technologies? And what I see with my competitors are they're shrinking the catalogs. Their part number list is shrinking every month, every year. And the prices are going up exponentially too because they're maximizing profits. But for a small business, it's more about the learning and the technology and the innovation. And I think that's what really separates our company from our competitors is that we love to learn and always do that. I mean, we have started since 2017, we were making one product line. Now we make 4 different product lines. Why do we make 4 different product lines? Because we're always looking to innovative processes and how do we make things better. We're actually using new products that we've just developed in the past couple of years and what we would call legacy operations that people absolutely love. They go, oh, this is the greatest thing that we've ever used. Where my competitors are taking things that people used to like and saying, you can't get that anymore. And in the food industry, it's no different. Oh, well, if, fudgy brownie batter is the big market, everybody's going to fudgy brownie batter, and the standard almond or walnut brownie batter is going away. But you have the ability to be innovative and create your own designs and say, no, I think the market wants this and the market needs this. And so I think for a small business perspective, we can pivot easier. The hard part for a small business though is finding out where we need to pivot. That's not always readily available. We don't always know exactly what the market's doing or exactly what our customers are wanting without needing more help that a big corporation has. They have the ability to have teams of people to work on stuff where we don't.
So it has been all about food. That is certainly where I've spent the last 20 years. For me, so baking for me has been a passion. It's something that I like to do. It's not something that I've ever had a lot of time to do. And so pre-COVID, I was on 120 flights a year. I wasn't home. I wasn't able to spend the time at home with my kids that I felt like I should be or I needed to. I wasn't able to spend my time in the areas that I felt like I needed to. And so for me, Baking checked my mom guilt box, and I know you guys may not be able to relate to mom guilt, but I'm sure there's a very similar feeling. But there are things that we do because it makes us feel better when we can't do other things. And so I could never be the room mom. I could never chaperone the field trips, but I could go over the top and do crazy things and spend tons of time in the kitchen and produce something spectacular. I have boys who are oblivious to just about everything, and so they don't care, but it made me feel good. So, as I was trying to determine, do I continue down the consulting path, or do I start a company of my own? What I really looked at was opportunity. I knew food. I knew that I wanted to be in food. I know how to sell it. I know how to produce it. But I guess the question became, what food do I want to be in? Baking was a passion. And so, but really by process of elimination, this is kind of how it went. I walked the perimeter of the store, and I knew I didn't want to sell anything that required temperature control. So I didn't want to be in the freezer. I didn't want to be in the refrigerated case. Logistics is a nightmare, and that just wasn't something that I wanted to deal with. I knew I didn't want to sell something that was in a glass jar, or something that could break in transit, or something that was very heavy or difficult to ship. I knew that I didn't want to, in order to have a new innovative product, I was pretty certain that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We go to these food shows and see tens of thousands of food companies at these places. And, a Cricket protein powder granola bar is kind of a cool idea, but does that appeal to the masses? And I knew I wanted something that would appeal to the masses. And so as I did this process of elimination, I also had a non-compete in a few categories, and so it just didn't even make sense. Although that would end in a couple of years, it didn't make sense to even go there. So that's how I ended up in the baking aisle. As I walked up and down the baking aisle, there's a lot of brands that have been there for a really long time. Betty Crocker, Duncan Hines, Pillsbury. These are legacy brands that when you walk down that aisle, you see the red or you see the blue, and the consumer knows exactly who that company is. But when you look on the shelves, there has not been a whole lot of innovation in that category in a long time. A lot of people who have come to the shelf have done so with attribute-specific products, so gluten-free, paleo, low sugar, things like that. There's a small subset of the consumer that does purchase that. They are a pretty loud subset that wants those attribute-specific products. However, I wanted a product that would appeal to the masses, and so that is why I chose to go with cookie mixes. I felt like there was a way for me to be able to differentiate on the shelf, and we are a woman-owned business, which is not on the shelf today in the mainline category with those legacy brands. We are made with non-GMO ingredients, which is also not something that the competition is doing. Also, with the rise of specialty cookies, the crumbles and places like that, I felt like there was a market for a more premium cookie on the shelf. So that is a very long-winded way to kind of just tell you kind of how I ended up in that place.
I agree. I would say that the pride in their work was a big thing. I think the second thing is using private industry. If you didn't hire them, I didn't hire them, using our names to get a job in a particular industry, to say, look at what I did with this company. And I'll be honest with you, most of the people that I worked with, they did that. They said, hey, I worked with ASI. This is what they did. And, and they were able to get jobs because, when people come to me and they say, what's your opinion? I can give them an honest opinion. I can say, this is what the students did. This is what the report contained. This is what I liked about the report. And, each student has their own skill set. So you know who's the data cruncher. You know who's the visionary. You know who's this. So a lot of times when a company would contact me and say, hey, I saw a student put on their application that they did X culture. X culture. Nice. They did an X culture project for you. And the first question I ask is, what is the student's job going to be?
Yeah.
What are you going to task the student with doing? Well, this student is going to be a R&D data cruncher. Oh, well, that student did this in this particular project. This is the data that he or she shared with me. And they absolutely love it. The students love it because we can give honest feedback about what they did. The companies love it because they had a real world experience with a real company, with a real problem. Okay, and we can talk about what each person in that particular group was able to facilitate. And so, especially with my projects, because I didn't have 500 people, 500 teams, I was able to really know the students and really know their skill set. So when I would get contacted, like I said, and some people would contact me LinkedIn, some would be email, Some would be weird channels. They send it through our sales channel. Oh, we went to your website and found your sales at ASI, and so we sent you a question. But it was good to be able to do that. So I think that also incentivizes the students because the companies will know their strengths and weaknesses. And so when they're looking for work or a career outside of education, we can speak to that. And so I always use the fact that whether we had them at X Culture or as an intern or anything, anybody that I've ever given, a referral for has not only got the job, but normally has jumped 3-4 levels in that company. And I think that's another incentive for the students.
One, possibly an incentive. So what we noticed is when we started X Culture, we would normally try to work with large companies. So like the Home Depot, Mercedes-Benz, Louis Vuitton, JCB, like some really big companies. And what we noticed is that smaller companies actually get more teams, or more teams choose smaller companies. And so talking to the students, it seems to me that the reason they like, for example, My Better Batch, or maybe something, like advanced Superabrasives, because you are where they want to be in 3-5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the challenges you see now, that's what they will see in a few years. I mean, how soon will they lead a company like Mercedes-Benz? Probably most of them never. So whereas how soon will you start your own small business or maybe manage something with a few dozen people? Very likely. In fact, most of them, that's why they do the MBA degree or whatever other degree they do. And so in a way, I guess they're probably here also trying to learn your business model, your challenges, maybe even learn from your mistakes. Yeah. Like one question that comes up all the time in the webinars, if you could do it again, how would you do it? Or, if you were me, like what would be the advice? And I think maybe that's one of those sort of an opportunity to sort of learn, do it for somebody else so that you know how to do it when you do it for yourself. Yeah. So this question here. So we have traditional consulting companies, some are big, some are small, but in any case it would be a small number of professional consultants working on your case versus this whole crowd. So Wikipedia versus the Encyclopedia Britannica. We know that the crowds cannot do some things. Again, if you need high level expertise or if you need some special connections, they probably will not have it. But other things that the large crowd of sort of semi-experts can do, if not necessarily better, than be particularly well equipped to do, what would be those problems or tasks that they could be effective at solving?
Yeah, I think the research that they did for me was a lot of surveys and asking questions and getting to people around the world that I wouldn't have. I could hire a consulting firm here to work on some of that. I don't know that I could get the broadness of the scope of what the students are able to do in a project like this. This was extremely helpful to me because I don't have the tens of thousands of dollars, nor do I know at this point really what questions to ask that would be beneficial to me. And so, this project for me was very broad. I think when we participate again, we will get much more granular in what we're trying to do. But there was value in starting very broad in just understanding the big picture things. But, for me, I could not have gone and hired a firm. I couldn't afford it, couldn't justify the spend of going out. And so this allowed me to get such a broad audience providing feedback that I really don't think I could have gotten even if I were to spend $50,000 to a consulting firm here.
And to be honest, even if you hired, let's say, I don't know, some professional consulting company, do they have enough contacts in so many different countries to interview potential retailers, for example, for a product like this?
Well, that would require me identifying those markets and pointing them in the right direction to be able to gather the feedback. And in this case, this was a very, I'm not narrowing it down to any one area. It was a very, very broad response. And so I think in a lot of ways, it helped me. The difference between a consulting, I would have had to feed them a lot of the information to have them. Now, would I have gotten different results? I really think the results that I got have to do more with the way in which I ask the questions than with who was responding to the question, if that makes sense. And so, it was a very, very broad, I threw a lot of things out there. And it was just a grab of what information can I get and how can we make this useful. And like I said, we'll narrow down to get more granular the next time, but I don't think I would have been able to guide the stage that I am in is very different than the stage that you're in. And so I wouldn't have been able to guide a consulting firm to be able to gather the right information for me.